What if I told you that a company you've definitely heard of once turned down an offer worth a fortune? All for a little search engine almost nobody thought was valuable. Yahoo had the chance to buy Google for $1 million, and it said no. It's one of the internet age's great cautionary tales. People love telling it. There's just one crucial detail almost everyone leaves out. Almost none of it is true. They've got the company wrong, they've got the price wrong, and they've definitely got the way it went down wrong. The real story is stranger and sadder, and honestly a lot more human than the version that gets passed around at dinner parties. The reason the myth spreads is simple. It just sounds good. So let me untangle the real version for you, piece by piece. Because once you see what actually happened in those rooms, I don't think you'll ever tell the old one again. Let's start with that $1 million. Because that part isn't completely invented. It just has the wrong company's name stapled to it. Back in 1999, Google was barely a company at all. Larry Page and Sergey Brin were still PhD students at Stanford, and the search engine they'd built was quietly eating their lives. It was pulling so much time away from their doctorates that, honestly, they wanted out. They wanted to sell the thing and get back to being students. So a venture capitalist named Vinod Khosla connected them with one of the biggest search portals of the era, a company called Excite, and they asked for just $1 million for Google. Excite's CEO, a man named George Bell, said no. And here's the part almost nobody ever hears. So Khosla goes back to the founders, talks them down, and actually gets them to drop the price to $750,000. Just sit with that for a second. The founders of Google cut their own price by $250,000 just to make the deal easier to say yes to. And Bell? He still said no. So why would a smart guy running a successful company pass on what we now know was the single greatest bargain in the history of business? Here's where it gets interesting because it wasn't really about the money. Bell did his homework. He ran a head-to-head test. He put Excite Search on one screen and Google's on the other. And then he fired hundreds of everyday queries at both of them. And by his own account, he just couldn't see much of a difference between them. And I'll be honest with you because I actually used Excite back in the day. If you'd sat 1999 me down in front of those two screens and asked me to pick the winner, I'm not sure I'd have gotten it right either. The thing that makes Google obviously better in hindsight just wasn't obvious yet. Put yourself in Bell's chair for a moment, staring at two pages that look basically the same. That's not stupidity. That's the fog every one of us would have been standing in. But there was a second reason, and that's the one that really killed it. Larry Page didn't just want to sell Google. He'd written up this whole proposal, and the pitch was basically, if Excite ripped out its own search technology and dropped his in instead, it would pull in something like $47 million in extra revenue. Sounds amazing, right? But think about what he was actually asking for. A company with a handful of employees was telling one of the biggest names on the internet to tear out its own engine and bolt in theirs instead. To George Bell, that wasn't a sale. That was a tiny startup trying to take over his company from the inside. So he passed. And in his world, in that moment with the information he had, it honestly wasn't a crazy call. So yes, there really was $1 million no. There was even a $750,000 one. That number you saw on the thumbnail is real. It just belongs to Excite, not to Yahoo. The two companies get blended together in the retelling until nobody remembers who actually turned down what. Which finally brings us to Yahoo. And this is where the myth and the truth split apart for good. Because Yahoo's mistake was real. It was just bigger, later, and a whole lot more expensive than the legend lets on. To understand it, you have to understand the world back then. Think back to the late 90s, the early 2000s. This was the age of the portal. The idea was that you'd pick one website, one front door to the entire internet, and basically live there. You'd check your email there, read your news, get your weather and your horoscope and your stock quotes, and you'd run all your searches there too. And the king of the portals was Yahoo. It was enormous, a household name, the kind of brand that felt permanent. And here's the mindset that explains everything that follows. Search, to a company like Yahoo, was just one feature among dozens. A little box on an already crowded page. They didn't think the goal was to send you somewhere else as fast as possible. The goal was to keep you on Yahoo, clicking around, looking at ads, for as long as humanly possible. A search engine that whisked you off their site quickly was, in a strange way, almost the opposite of the business they thought they were in. Meanwhile, Google was this odd little site with nothing on it. No news, no weather, no horoscope, just a logo, a search bar, and a lot of empty white space. To the giants of the era, that emptiness didn't look like genius. It looked like a company that hadn't figured out its business model yet. Then, in 2001, Yahoo hired a new CEO named Terry Semel. And Semel was an unusual pick. He came from Hollywood. He'd spent decades as a studio executive at Warner Brothers. He was a media man, a deal maker. He wasn't a search guy. He wasn't really a technology guy at all, and for a while that didn't seem to matter. But by 2002, something had shifted. Google wasn't a toy anymore. It was growing fast, and it was quietly becoming the best search engine on Earth. Semmel saw it, and so in 2002, Yahoo made its move. They opened negotiations to buy Google outright, and they put $3 billion on the table. That's $3 billion for the same company that, just 3 years earlier, couldn't get anyone to pay $750,000. But Google had grown up. They looked at that offer, and they came back with a number of their own. They wanted $5 billion, and Terry Semmel walked away. I keep imagining that moment. A former movie executive sitting across from a couple of guys in their 20s, being told that the price for their little search engine had just jumped from $3 billion to $5. You can almost feel what's going through his head. In Hollywood, when a negotiation balloons like that overnight, your gut screams that you're being played, that you should hold your ground and let the other side blink first. That instinct had served Semmel for an entire career. And right here, in the one room where it mattered most, it betrayed him. Now, on the surface, that looks like the most expensive walkaway in corporate history. $5 billion turned down for a company worth over $4 trillion today. But hold on, because this is exactly where the story gets genuinely interesting, and where I think Semmel deserves a little more sympathy than he usually gets. Here's the thing nobody mentions. The dot-com crash had hammered Yahoo's own stock. At its low point that year, Yahoo itself was worth only somewhere around $5 billion. So when Google asked for $5 billion, they were essentially asking Yahoo to bet the entire company on them. This wasn't a confident giant casually scooping up a startup. This was much closer to a merger of equals. Yahoo would have had to spend basically its whole market value to swallow a rival. From inside that room, in that bruised economy, walking away didn't feel reckless. It felt responsible. It even felt prudent. So what did Yahoo do instead? A few months later, in December of 2002, they bought a different, safer search company called Inktomi. They paid about $235 million for it. It was cheaper, it was familiar, it was lower risk. And in the long run, it was almost worthless next to what they'd just passed on. It's the perfect little symbol of the whole decision. They were offered the future for $5 billion, they turned it down, and then they spent a fraction of that on a piece of the past instead. Yahoo would keep tinkering with search for years, and it would never, ever catch the company it had let walk out the door. Now, before I tell you how this ends, let me put you in that room for a second. Forget everything you know. It's 2002, the market just crashed, and a couple of grad students want your whole company for a search engine you can barely tell apart from 3 others. Would you bet everything or walk away? I'm not sure I'd have been brave enough to say yes. If this thought lands with you, I genuinely want to know where you'd have come down. But hold that for the comments at the end, because there's one more twist coming. And if you like business stories told straight, the real version instead of the myth that just sounds good, then this is the channel for it. The next one I've got lined up has a no in it. That's even harder to believe than this one, so go ahead and subscribe now so you don't miss it. Okay, let's get to the ending. Because Yahoo's run of bad decisions, it turns out, was just getting started. Fast forward to 2008. Microsoft comes knocking with an offer to buy Yahoo for around $44.6 billion. That's $44 billion. And Yahoo said no. Convinced the company was worth even more, they held out. The deal fell apart. And here's the difficult truth. Yahoo would never again, not once, be worth anything close to what Microsoft offered them that day. That was the peak. They just couldn't see it from where they were standing. And then came the long, slow slide. By 2016, the company that could have owned Google twice over sold its core internet business to Verizon. The price was about $4.8 billion. Sit with that number for a second. It's roughly the same amount Google had asked Yahoo to pay back in 2002. Except this time, it wasn't the price of buying the future. It was the price of Yahoo's entire business on its way out the door. So what happened to the two companies that said no? Excite, the one that turned down Google twice for what amounts to pocket change by today's standards, got swallowed up and broken apart in the mid-2000s, a faint shadow of what it once was. And Google? Google is now worth more than $4 trillion. That's trillion, with a T, not billion. So the next time someone leans across the table and tells you that Yahoo passed on buying Google for $1 million, you'll know exactly what to say. That was Excite, not Yahoo. The price was actually $750,000. And the real Yahoo mistake came years later, with 3 more zeros attached, in a room where, for reasons that honestly made sense at the time, A CEO decided his own company wasn't worth betting on a search engine. It's so easy to laugh at these decisions now, but every single one of them was made by a smart person, looking at the information in front of them, with no idea which little startup was about to become one of the most valuable things ever built. Hindsight makes geniuses of all of us. The hard part, the part Bell and Semmel got wrong, is seeing it while you're still standing in the room. So I'll leave you with the question I can't stop asking myself. The next time something small and unremarkable lands in front of you, the thing everyone else is shrugging at, how would you ever know? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I read them, and if you want to be in the room for the next one of these, you already know where the subscribe button is.